The bullies picked the wrong girl black. Now the warrior inside her has awakened. They thought she'd be quiet. They thought she'd be weak. But when a group of entitled bullies targeted the new black girl at school, they had no idea who they were messing with. What began as whispers and cruel jokes quickly spiraled into public humiliation, until something inside her snapped. Not with rage, but with power. Because behind her silence was a story of strength, resilience, and a warrior spirit waiting to rise. Stay with us. This isn't just about a girl who stood up for herself. It's about a moment that changed everything. A quiet black girl walks into Brooklyn High. She's here to finish her senior year and stay unnoticed, but before she can even make it through the first week, a white girl in her class decides she's the perfect target. The laughter starts first, then the whispers, then the public humiliation, and when the bully smirks convinced it's time for one final performance, the crowd gathers waiting for the inevitable. But there's something they don't know about the black girl. She's not just the new kid, she's a fighter trained to battle, and she's about to remind them all exactly what that means. Though the Tennessee morning rolled in slow and gray over the quiet town of Franklin, where the hills turned gold in autumn and the air felt like the hush before a sermon, at 7:23 a.m., the bus wheezed to a stop in front of Mason Ridge High School, and students poured out in waves, laughing, stretching, thumping their backpacks against each other's shoulders. They moved in tight clusters, already shaped by years of knowing who belonged where, but the last person to step off. The bus walked alone. Alana Pierce adjusted the strap of her denim backpack and stared up at the school's wide brick face. The painted eagle mascot spreading its wings above the double doors. Mason Ridge was clean polished and proud of it. Football trophies lined the glass cases. Banners from state championships hung in the halls, and signs promoting school values, respect, integrity, kindness were posted in every corner. But Alana knew better. The words were decoration. What ruled this place was something unspoken and far more dangerous. Culture, and in places like this, kids like her were rarely welcomed into that culture without a test. She walked inside, her shoes quiet against the waxed floor. Though no one said anything, she could feel it, the weight of dozens of eyes catching sight of her for just a second too long. They looked, turned, whispered. Maybe they didn't say black girl out loud, but she felt the way their eyes narrowed, their heads tilted. She'd seen that look before, and that measuring look. Was she going to be loud? Was she going to get angry? Was she going to play the victim? Was she dangerous? That's how it always went. The script never changed. Alana wasn't surprised. Mason Ridge was 92% white, something she'd Googled when her father told her they were moving here for a fresh start. Franklin was safe, slow, full of churches and weekend farmers markets, but beneath the smiles and southern hospitality, Alana had learned quickly how isolation worked. You didn't need to scream slurs to make someone feel small. All you had to do was look right through them. In homeroom, no one sat next to her. In English, a boy raised his hand and asked if they were going to start teaching Aeonic. Now, after Alana answered a question with perfect diction, the teacher smiled awkwardly and moved on. At lunch, she found the corner table near the vending machines and sat alone. She didn't pull out her phone, didn't pretend to be busy. She just ate slow and steady while the hum of cafeteria noise swirled around her. That was when she heard the voice, well, look what we have here." Alana didn't even have to look up. The tone was casual, amused, but meant to draw attention. She'd heard it too many times before she glanced upward, meeting the blue eyes of Savannah Whitmore, queen of Mason Ridge. Blonde hair, flawless makeup, perfectly curated cruelty. Two girls flanked her like well-trained accessories. Brielle and Kenzie. Behind them stood two boys, both tall, both smirking. "She's real quiet," Kenzie said, biting into her apple. "Probably doesn't speak English. Maybe she's one of those girls from Chicago," Brielle added, eyes wide and mock concern, "like you know gangs." Someone laughed. A few more turned their heads to see what was happening. Phones were already out. Alana felt the burn of them, not on her skin, but in the air around her. Recording judging. "Hey," Savannah said, leaning on the edge of Alana's table, "do you know how to say hello, or are you just too good for us?" Alana didn't answer. She picked up her juice box and took a calm sip. The silence made Savannah's lips twitch. She reached forward and knocked the juice over with a perfectly manicured finger. It spilled across Alana's tray, soaking her sandwich and chips. The room went quiet for a beat. The laughter didn't come immediately. This time there was a pause, as if they were waiting to see what the black girl would do, whether she'd get up and shout, whether she'd swing. But Alana didn't do any of that. She exhaled softly, set her fork down, picked up the dripping tray, and walked without a word toward the trash can. That silence followed her like a second shadow. By the time sixth period rolled around, the school was buzzing, not about Savannah, but about Alana, about how she didn't flinch, didn't cry, didn't even blink, just stared at Savannah with the calm of someone who had survived much worse. Some kids said it was brave, others whispered that she was probably just waiting for the right moment to snap. One boy in chemistry said, "She's from the city, man, those girls don't mess around." Savannah hated the shift. She could feel it in the way people watched Alana walk down the hall. It wasn't mockery anymore, it was curiosity, respect, and that was dangerous. That night at home, Alana sat in the kitchen of their small rental off Lewisburg Pike. The house smelled faintly of coffee and the old wood her dad had sanded down himself. Across the counter, Marcus Pierce, former middleweight MMA champion turned mechanic, watched his daughter pick at her dinner. Talk to me, he said, his voice calm but grounded like bedrock. Some girl at school, she muttered. Marcus raised an eyebrow. She hit you? No, he didn't say anything, just waited. Alana finally looked up. They tested me today, just like always. Saw a black girl, thought I'd bark or bite. Wanted a show, you give them one. She shook her head. I walked away. Marcus nodded. That's harder than it looks. Didn't feel like it, she whispered. It felt like losing. He set his coffee cup down and walked around to sit across from her. Losing is when you let them turn you into what they already believe you are. I just hate that they expect it, that they want me to be the angry black girl so they can feel justified, so they can laugh and say, see, told you. He nodded again. His face didn't move much, but his eyes softened. That's the trick of racism now. It don't wear hoods anymore, it wears perfume. It smiles, it pretends like it's joking. Alana stared at him. I didn't raise you to fight every battle, he said, leaning in, but I didn't raise you to run from all of them. Either you pick your moment, and when you do, you don't fight for your pride, you fight so they never try it again with you or with anyone else. She swallowed hard, blinked away the burn behind her eyes. I don't want to be her again, she said. You're not her, he said, you're you, and that's plenty. The next morning the whispers were louder. Eyes lingered longer in gym class. Brielle accidentally bumped her shoulder so hard Alana stumbled. Kenzie shoved her during dodgeball. The coach looked, but said nothing. Savannah smiled from the bleacher. Liam, the quarterback, made a joke about Alana being from war zones. Another boy offered her a banana, laughing. I heard you people like these. Still Alana said nothing, but her fingers curled slightly. That afternoon, as the last bell rang and students surged out of classrooms like a tide, a message spread down the halls behind the gym. After school, she's getting handled. Alana heard it too. She didn't speak. She just walked toward the back of the school, and the fighter in her finally opened her eyes. The pavement behind Mason Ridge High was still damp from a light morning drizzle, cracked in places, faded white lines marking what used to be a faculty parking lot. It was the kind of forgotten corner, perfect for the things that weren't meant to be seen, like the so-called talk students gave to one another when authority wasn't around. Word had spread fast by the time Alana rounded the corner, her footsteps even and quiet. A group of nearly 30 students had already gathered in a half-moon, phones tucked in palms, faces lit with expectation. They weren't here to see a fight, they were here to see her fall. At the center stood Savannah, arms crossed, mouth pulled into a smirk that didn't quite reach her eyes. Kenzie and Brielle flanked her, shifting nervously, but playing their parts behind them. Liam and Noah, the muscles, stood close, all swagger and snide chuckles, cracking their knuckles like a performance. But it was the silence of the crowd that struck Alana. They weren't cheering, they weren't shouting, they were waiting, like they didn't know how this would go, like they were finally unsure who held the power. Savannah was the first to speak. Well, look who showed up. I thought you'd be halfway home by now. Isn't that what you people do, run when it gets real? Alana didn't answer. She stepped forward, her expression unreadable, posture relaxed, hands still at her sides. You think throwing juice on someone is what makes you strong? Her voice was soft, steady, but it cut through the tension like a blade. You think this, she gestured to the circle, is power? Savannah's jaw clenched. You have no idea what power looks like. Liam laughed, stepping forward, eager. You done with the speeches, or are you going to do something? Chicago, he said the city, like it was an insult, like it meant she was dirty, broken, violent. And that was when something shifted in Alana's eyes. Not rage, not even anger, just clarity. She had hoped to avoid this. She had done everything right. But sometimes silence only feeds the wolves. Liam swung first. It was wide, theatrical, meant to impress the crowd more than to land a punch, but by the time his fist crossed the air, Alana was already inside his reach. She moved like she'd been born for it. One hand caught his wrist, the other pressed into his elbow, and with a slight twist his body flipped. The sound of his back hitting the pavement echoed. He groaned, breathless, eyes wide in disbelief. Phones rose higher, now mouths opened, but no one spoke. Liam rolled to his side, moaning, stunned. Noah stepped up next, cursing under his breath, charging without thinking. Alana ducked his first jab, sidestepped the second, and pivoted behind him. She wrapped her arm under his shoulder, locked it, and swept his legs in one swift motion. He collapsed like a felled tree. A gasp rippled through the crowd. Kenzie took a step back. Brielle looked like she wanted to disappear. Savannah's smile faltered, her eyes darted around. No teachers, no backup, only witnesses. Alana didn't gloat, she didn't raise her arms, she just stood calm and still, her breathing even, hands once again at her sides. Her voice was low when she finally looked at Savannah. You brought all these people to watch me fall, but now they're seeing you. Savannah's face twisted, a snarl building behind her teeth, and she lunged. No strategy, just desperation. Her hand reached for Alana's hair, but Alana's reflexes were already in motion. She grabbed Savannah's wrist, midair, firm but controlled, and held it there, suspended for a moment. They just stood like that, locked in place, eyes locked. Savannah's breath quickened. Alana leaned in slightly, just enough that only Savannah could hear. You don't have any power over me, and you never will. Then she let go. Savannah stumbled backward, caught off balance more by the weight of those words than by Alana's grip. For the first time, the Queen of Mason Ridge looked small. The circle around them had grown completely silent. Even the phones had dropped, because what they just seen wasn't a fight, it was a revelation, and no one knew how to process it. It was at that exact moment that the door to the gym slammed open. A sharp Voice cut through the air. What the hell's going on here? It was Coach Langley, 6 feet 2 inches, former Marine, no patience for drama. He looked at Liam, still groaning, then at Alana standing alone surrounded by students, everyone inside now. They scattered, most of them pretending they'd never been. Their phones disappeared, eyes turned to the ground. But Coach Langley didn't miss a beat. Pierce, in my office now, and someone get the nurse for these two. Alana nodded. She didn't argue. 15 minutes later she sat across from Principal Moran, Coach Langley, and a school counselor who kept asking if she felt emotionally distressed. She wasn't crying, she wasn't yelling, she just sat there straight-backed, waiting. Violence, Principal Moran said, hands folded, is never acceptable no matter the situation. Alana said, nothing you understand, we'll need to contact your parent or guardian. She nodded. Fine, she said, call him. The prince leaned back, sighing, this isn't how we like to welcome new students, but your actions today. I defended myself, she interrupted. It was the first time she'd raised her voice, and even then it was barely above a whisper. They cornered me, they planned it, they recorded it. I didn't start this. Moran blinked, shifting in his chair. That may be, but you escalated it. We let your father speak before we decide the next step. 20 minutes passed. Then came the sound of boots on linoleum. When the office door opened, the room shifted, because the man who stepped inside wasn't just any parent, he was a legend. Marcus Pierce, tall, solid eyes like steel, a name once printed on ESPN, a face known in the MMA world, the Rook. They used to call him a fighter. Walked away at the height of his career. For a moment, even Coach Langley looked stunned. Mr. Pierce, the principal, started standing. Marcus nodded, but didn't shake his hand. He looked at his daughter. You good? She nodded. Did you do what I taught you? Another nod. Then I'm proud of you. The silence that followed was thick. Finally, the principal cleared his throat. Mr. Pierce, we didn't realize. Does it matter who I am? Marcus asked, cutting him off. Would it change how you saw my daughter if I wasn't famous? Moran stammered. Marcus turned to Coach Langley. You saw the footage, yet footage? Langley asked. She wasn't the only one recording. Marcus said, a student already sent it to me. He pulled out his phone, pressed play, and let them all watch. The silence after was undeniable. When the video ended, Marcus put his phone away. My daughter didn't fight to hurt anyone, she fought to stop them from hurting her, and she did it with control and restraint most grown men don't have. Moran tried to compose himself. Mr. Pierce, we still have to follow district policy. Marcus looked at him long and hard. Your policy allowed my daughter to be harassed for a week straight while teachers turned away, so let's not pretend this is about rules, it's about image. Moran opened his mouth, then closed it again. That night the video went viral inside the school, not just because of the takedowns, but because of the way Alana didn't celebrate, didn't gloat, just stood her ground strong. And still the next day, everything changed. Alana walked through the halls, and people stepped aside, not out of fear, but out of something else, respect. A few nodded, some smiled. No jokes, no whispers. Savannah wasn't in school. Liam had a bruised ego and a sprained wrist. Brielle and Kenzie stayed quiet for the first time since freshman year. Alana didn't gloat, she just walked to class. A girl from her homeroom, a soft-spoken redhead named Molly, asked if she wanted to sit together at lunch. Alana said yes. By the time fifth period rolled around, one of the boys from the basketball team asked if she played. She didn't answer, just smiled, and for the first time since arriving at Mason Ridge, Alana Pierce felt seen, not feared, not mocked, just seen. And the whole school learned a lesson that day, one they wouldn't forget. The strongest person in the room isn't the loudest, it's the one who knows when to speak and when to stand. By Friday morning the energy at Mason Ridge High had shifted entirely, not in some loud dramatic way, but in the kind of subtle transformation that older folks notice first. The way eyes stopped narrowing when Alana walked by, the way conversations paused, not to mock her, but out of respect, and the way the hall always finally stopped holding their breath when she entered. It was the kind of shift that didn't happen because a teacher gave a speech or a counselor put up an anti-bullying poster. It happened because something real broke through the routine. The truth was, most of the students had never seen someone like Alana, someone who looked like her, carried herself with such quiet strength, and refused to fit the story they'd already written for her. They expected defiance or fear. Here they got dignity instead. She didn't walk the halls like a conqueror, she wasn't trying to become the new queen bee. She wore the same jacket, carried the same backpack, kept her headphones in even when there was no music. But now people nodded at her, some whispered her name, not with disdain but curiosity, and some just looked at her like they were seeing her for the first time. What struck them most wasn't the fight itself, it was the fact that after everything Alana never once bragged, she didn't post about it, she didn't share the video, she didn't even talk about it, she just showed up, sat through class, took notes, laughed once in history when the teacher told a dry joke, and that laugh was more powerful than any punch. Savannah didn't return that week. Word around school was that her parents were in meetings with the superintendent trying to decide whether to transfer her to a private school. The district didn't make a public statement, but there were whispers of suspension and a formal investigation, not because of what she did to Alana, but because she got caught. The truth is, Mason Ridge didn't care about bullying until it made them look Bad until the video started beyond the school walls, until parents began asking questions, until alumni started posting online that they were disappointed in the values being upheld. One clip even made onto the local news blurred faces, but the story was their student targeted in racially charged harassment incident. Defend herself, community divided indeed. At home, Alana sat at the kitchen table while her father flipped pancakes, humming softly to the rhythm of the morning news. Marcus didn't say much, but she knew he was watching closely, watching the she carried herself, watching to see if she was proud, ashamed, or somewhere in between. You sleep better? He finally asked. She nodded a little. He set a plate down in front of her, heavy with pancakes and strawberries. Good, you did right. She looked at him. Even if they say I started it, he smiled just slightly. You didn't start anything, you just decided it was done. She stabbed a piece of pancake. It's not over. Not really. He sat down across from her, elbows on the table. No, it's not, but that's the thing about standing up for yourself. It doesn't erase what happened, it just makes people think twice before doing it again. She nodded slowly. I think I scared them. Maybe they needed to be scared, but more than that, you reminded them that strength doesn't have to be loud. When Monday came, Principal Moran made an announcement over the intercom. It was the usual script. The school did not tolerate harassment. Respect was a core value, and every student deserved safety. It was sterile, emotionless, and probably written by the district's legal team, but then he added something off script, something small. I want to thank those students who've reminded us this week what it means to lead with grace under pressure. That was all, but everyone knew who he was talking about. That afternoon in the cafeteria, Alana walked past the corner table where she used to sit alone. It was empty now, not because she wasn't welcome there, but because she'd been invited elsewhere. Molly had saved her a seat at the center table next to a kid from the Avenue Club and a girl who played clarinet in the school band. It wasn't the popular table, but it was real, and it was enough. As she sat down, someone tapped her shoulder. She turned to see Mr. Caldwell, the U.S. history teacher, holding a small stack of flyers. I'm starting a student panel, he said, voice low but kind. Open conversations about race, equity, and identity. No lectures, just students talking to students. I was wondering. Alana looked at him, surprised. You want me to be on it? Only if you want to be, he replied. No pressure, but people listen when you speak, even when you don't say much. She took the flyer and nodded. I'll think about it, that's all I ask. Later that day, walking down the hallway past the display of sports trophies and senior portraits, Alana heard footsteps behind her. She turned slightly and saw Kenzie alone, looking nervous. Hey, Kenzie said, shifting her weight awkwardly. I wanted to say I was wrong about you, about everything. Alana didn't say anything. She waited. I was just trying to fit in. Kenzie continued. That's not an excuse. I was mean. You didn't deserve any of it. The hallway was quiet. Finally, Alana nodded. Thanks. Kenzie looked surprised. That's it. What do you want me to say? Alana asked gently. You owned it. That matters more than a big speech. Kenzie looked like she might cry, but she smiled instead. You're kind. After everything, you're still kind. Alana shrugged. My kindness doesn't mean I'm weak. I know, Kenzie said. Trust me, I know. Weeks passed. The leaves turned from yellow to orange to brittle brown. Thanksgiving came and went, and Mason Ridge kept changing, not just because of policies or assemblies or diversity posters, but because of a girl who refused to let them define her. They talked differently now in the hallways. They thought twice before making a joke at someone's expense. They invited people they used to ignore, not perfectly, not always, but the shift had begun, because when you see someone stand up not just for themselves, but for something bigger, it plants a seed, and some of those seeds take root. By December, Alana had joined the panel Mr. Caldwell started. She didn't say much at the first meeting, but when she did speak, people leaned in. She talked about code switching, about feeling invisible and hypervisible at the same time, about how silence was a kind of armor, but not a home. Her voice shook once, but she kept going. After the meeting, a younger student, a freshman girl with deep brown skin and shy eyes, came up to her and whispered, thank you. I didn't know people like us could be strong like that and still be good. Alana smiled, really smiled. You can be both. Don't let them make you choose. That night she sat at her desk, flipping through a small leather notebook her father had given her years ago. Most of the pages were blank, but now she picked up a pen and began to write. They wanted me to be angry. I chose to be whole. They wanted a fight. I gave them the truth. They saw a stereotype. I showed them a story. Outside, the wind rattled the windows, but inside, Alana felt steady. She hadn't set out to be a symbol. She hadn't planned on being anything more than a girl trying to finish senior year, but life doesn't always wait for you to be ready. Sometimes it throws you into the spotlight, not to shine, but to survive. And if you're strong enough, if you're grounded enough, you do both. At Mason Ridge High, they would remember her name not because she threw a punch, but because she carried something heavier, the weight of being judged before being known, and still walking forward with grace. And though they hadn't seen the fighter in her at first, by the time they did, it wasn't fear they felt. It was something far deeper, respect. Sometimes the quietest person in the room carries the loudest truth. They tried to define her by stereotypes, by the color of her skin, by their own fear and ignorance. But she didn't just rise above it. She redefined what power looks like. Not with fists, not with rage, but with grace, discipline, and unshakable dignity. This wasn't just about standing up to bullies. It was about showing an entire school, and maybe the world, that strength doesn't have to shout to be heard. If this story moved you, don't forget to like this video, leave a comment below, and subscribe to Soulful Stories V for more true tales of quiet strength and powerful transformation. Now, we turn to you. What would you have done in her place? Do you believe schools are doing enough to protect students from this kind of targeted bullying?